Hello, welcome to Green Tea Tales. Today's story is about Harriet Cross. Harriet thought her wedding day was going to be a day she would never forget, but not in a disappointing way. After being left at the altar, she soon found love again. My question to you, would you be willing to open your heart again so quickly after being broken, even if it's someone you know? Harriet Cross had never imagined her wedding day like this. That morning, she'd been glowing. Nervous? Sure, but glowing. Her best friend, Lacey Brown, helped her into the delicate lace gown they'd picked out together. In the little church dressing room, Lacey fixed Harriet's hair with careful hands and a smile that tried to hide its nerves. "You ready?" Lacey asked, tightening the veil. "As I'll ever be," Harriet whispered, gripping the bouquet like a lifeline. But when it came time for the ceremony, something was off. People began glancing around. Whispers floated. The organist played the same song twice. Roman, the groom, never showed. Lacey squeezed her hand, but Harriet barely noticed. Her cheeks burned as guests started shifting in their seats. Without a word, she turned and bolted from the church. The sky opened up as if on cue, thunder growled, and the rain came down hard. By the time Harriet made it to the bus stop down the block, she was soaked through. Makeup smudged, dress ruined, heart shattered. She sat on the cold bench, numb. A car slowed near the curb. The driver's side door flung open, and a man ran toward her. "Harriet?" he called. She blinked through the rain. Byron Walker. She hadn't seen him since high school. He was taller, broader, his eyes just as kind. Without a word, he pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he knelt in the puddles, not caring about his jeans or the rain hitting his back. "What can I do?" he asked gently. Harriet stared at him, stunned. Then something clicked. Chemistry class. Junior year. He'd always smiled at her like she was someone worth noticing. "Byron?" she murmured. He nodded and held out his hand. She hesitated, then took it. He led her to his car. The heater was on full blast. They didn't speak as he drove, just silence and the hum of wet tires on pavement. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't care. Eventually, they pulled into the driveway of a small brick house. He helped her inside without questions, guiding her past the mess of shoes and books near the entry. "Let's get you dry," he said softly. For the first time all day, Harriet let out a shaky breath. Maybe today didn't have to end completely broken. Byron disappeared down the hall and returned with a folded pile of clothes, jogging pants, an oversized t-shirt, and thick socks. "They're my sisters," he said. "Kelly, she's off at college now, but she won't mind. You're about the same size." Harriet nodded and took them with a quiet, "Thanks." While she changed in the bathroom, Byron put a kettle on the stove and rummaged through the fridge. He made a sandwich, turkey and cheese, nothing fancy, but warm and solid. The kettle started to whistle as Harriet stepped into the kitchen, her damp hair pulled back and the borrowed clothes hanging comfortably on her. Byron looked up. "Sit. Eat something." She obeyed, not out of hunger, but because it was the first order that didn't feel like pressure. The sandwich tasted better than expected. Simple, grounding. He poured her a cup of tea and set it in front of her, then leaned against the counter. "You can stay in Kelly's room tonight. No one's using it," he said, eyes steady. "Get some sleep. You've been through a lot." Harriet didn't argue. She looked down at her tea, then up at him. "Thank you," she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Byron gave her a small nod and stepped away. "I'll be in the study if you need anything. I'll give you some space." As he disappeared down the hallway, Harriet sat in the warm, quiet kitchen, holding the tea close to her chest. The house felt safe. Still, for the first time all day, she wasn't bracing for another blow. She wasn't okay, but at least she wasn't alone. Harriet lay on the edge of Kelly's bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The room was still, except for the soft tick of an old wall clock. Her body was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the church again, the empty aisle, the pity in people's faces. Lacey's worried eyes. What did I miss, she kept thinking. How could I not see this coming? Finally, she reached for her phone. It was still in her purse, half buried under the borrowed t-shirt. The screen lit up, 30 missed calls, dozens of texts. Her heart hammered. She scrolled through names, Lacey, her mom, Roman's sister, but her eyes locked on one name, Roman. She opened the message with shaking hands. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for marriage. I thought I was, but I realized I'm not in love with you like that. Just that, cold, clean, like a bandage ripped off too late. Harriet stared at it, her chest tightening. They had been together for 3 years. They'd talked about kids, moved in together, split holidays. He had been the one to propose. He planned the vacation, the dinner, the ring. He looked her in the eyes and asked her to be his wife. And now, without warning, he was out. No explanation beyond that hollow text. She didn't cry. She'd already done that back at the church in the rain. Now all she felt was a sharp, empty weight. Not sadness, just disbelief, like the rug had been yanked out from under her and she was still mid-fall, waiting to hit the floor. Harriet placed the phone face down and stared at the wall. 3 years. For a message like that. A soft knock broke the stillness of the room. Harriet, came a gentle voice from the other side. It's Paula, Byron's mom. I made breakfast, sweetheart. Come eat when you're ready. Harriet blinked. She hadn't seen Paula Walker since high school, but she remembered her clearly. Warm eyes, always smiling, the kind of mom who remembered everyone's name and made you feel welcome, even if you were just there for group project snacks. Harriet sat up, tucked her hair behind her ears, and slipped out of the room. The smell of eggs and cinnamon toast drifted through the house. In the kitchen, Paula was plating breakfast with the same ease Harriet remembered. Byron sat at the table, sipping coffee, eyes meeting hers with a quiet nod. Come, sit. Paula said kindly, guiding her to a chair. You need a good meal. Everything looks brighter on a full stomach. They didn't mention the wedding. Not once. No awkward apologies, no he didn't deserve you speeches, just small talk, easy, light. So Harriet, Paula asked between bites, what are you doing these days? Work keeping you busy. I'm in marketing, Harriet said, grateful for the shift in focus. Mostly digital campaigns. I work with a firm downtown. Oh, good for you, Paula smiled. And your family? Everyone doing all right? Yeah, Harriet said quietly. They're okay. The conversation floated from there. Weather, old teachers, a new coffee shop in town. When breakfast ended and Paula began clearing plates, Byron stood up and looked at Harriet. Hey, he said, just so you know, I'll be working from home the next couple of days. If you need anything, rides, help with errands, just space to breathe, I've got you. Harriet gave him a small, grateful smile. Thanks, Byron, she said. That means more than you know. That afternoon, Harriet finally made the calls she'd been avoiding. She stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, and dialed Lacey first. Her best friend picked up on the first ring. Harriet, oh my God, are you okay? Where are you? Harriet took a breath. I'm okay. Really, I'm with an old friend. I just needed some space to think and clear my head. There was silence on the other end, then a softer voice. You sure? Yeah, I'll explain everything later, I promise. You just need a little time. Next, she called her parents. That conversation was heavier. Her mom cried, her dad tried to sound calm, but Harriet reassured them both. She said she was safe. She said she'd be in touch soon. She didn't say where she was, and they didn't push. That evening, after dinner, she looked at Byron across the table. Do you mind taking me to the apartment? She asked quietly. I want to grab a few things. I think it's better if I just get it over with. Byron nodded. Of course. The drive was quiet, headlights stretching over wet roads. When they pulled up, the apartment looked lifeless. No lights on, blinds drawn. Inside, everything felt untouched. Roman's stuff was mostly gone, or maybe it had never been there to begin with. A few of Harriet's boxes were stacked near the door. She moved quickly, not wanting to linger. No notes, no trace of him. They left after 10 minutes. Can we swing by my old place? She asked as they got into the car. I want to check something. When they pulled up to the building she used to live in before she and Roman had signed the lease together, her heart sank. A folded letter was taped to the door. Reminder, final move-out day is 2 days from now. New tenants move in by Friday. Harriet clutched the paper, her stomach turning. She hadn't realized how fast everything would unravel. Byron stepped beside her. You can stay with me, he said calmly. As long as you need, I've got space. You don't need to figure it all out tonight." Harriet looked up at him, overwhelmed but grateful. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," he said. "Let's just take it one day at a time." The next morning, Harriet stood in the kitchen, finishing her tea as sunlight filtered in through the window. Byron was already at the table with his laptop open, typing quietly. She cleared her throat. "Hey, do you mind if I borrow my car today? I was thinking I could move the rest of my stuff into storage at my parents' place." Byron looked up and closed his laptop. "I'll drive you," he said. "You shouldn't have to do it alone. I'll help." Harriet hesitated, then nodded. "Thanks." They spent the afternoon loading boxes, clothes, books, a few kitchen items from the apartment she was supposed to share with Roman into the car. It felt surreal, packing up a life that hadn't even started. At her parents' house, her mom Susan met them in the driveway, eyes puffy, voice full of concern. "Baby, just stay here for a few days," she said as Harriet and Byron unloaded boxes into the backyard storage shed. "You don't have to be alone." Harriet shook her head gently. "I can't, Mom. If Roman comes by, I don't want to deal with that right now. I'm not ready." Susan glanced at Byron, then back at her daughter. She opened her mouth then closed it, respecting Harriet's decision for once. "Okay, just check in with me, all right?" "I will," Harriet said, giving her mom a quick hug. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Byron wiped his hands on his jeans and looked at Harriet. "You hungry?" She nodded. "Starving, actually." They found a quiet restaurant not far from her parents' place. Cozy, low lights, the kind of spot where no one cared who you were or what kind of day you'd had. Over dinner they talked, not about Roman or the wedding, but about high school, old teachers who ended up where. "I always thought you were too smart for that place," Harriet said, smiling across the table. Byron laughed. "You thought about me in high school?" She shrugged. "Now and then." By the time the check came, Harriet realized something strange. She didn't want the night to end. For the first time in days, she wasn't anxious or angry. She felt normal again. Safe. And she didn't want to be alone. As they waited for dessert, Harriet leaned back in her seat, her expression softening. "I never asked, what do you do now?" Byron sipped his water before answering. "I'm a software developer." Harriet smiled. "Of course you are. I always knew you had big dreams, big ideas. You used to draw crazy inventions in the margins of your notebooks." Byron chuckled, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, I was that kid," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I work for a mid-sized tech company now. I go into the office when I need to, but most of the time I work remotely." "That's cool," Harriet said. "Sounds like a good setup." "It works," Byron replied, then tilted his head. "What about you? Do you think you're ready to go back to work?" Harriet's smile faded slightly. She looked down at the napkin she was folding in her lap. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just throw myself into it. Get busy, forget. But the other part," she paused. "I'm scared Roman might show up. We work in the same building, not the same office, but still." Byron leaned forward, his tone quiet but firm. "You're stronger than you think, Harriet. You've handled everything that's happened with grace, more than most people could." She looked at him, eyes searching his. "You really think so?" "I know so," he said. "But take your time. Don't rush it. When you're ready, you'll know." Harriet nodded, the weight on her chest easing just a little. With Byron, she didn't feel like a woman who'd been left at the altar. She felt like herself again, just a little bruised, but still standing. Harriet returned to work the following Monday. She walked through the office doors with her head held high, even if her stomach was tight with nerves. Everyone had heard. Some offered sympathetic looks, a few gave quiet, glad you're back nods, but no one said anything directly, which she appreciated. She buried herself in tasks, campaign audits, client follow-ups, new proposals. If it was on her plate, she handled it. If it wasn't, she asked for it. The more she did, the less time she had to think. About the church. About the text, about Roman. But no matter how chaotic her day was, Byron always found a way to check in. Sometimes he'd show up at her office around noon, holding 2 coffees and a bag with her favorite sandwich. "Come on," he'd say with a grin. "You've been staring at that screen like it owes you money." Other times, when she came home late, drained and silent, dinner was already waiting. Nothing fancy, pasta, grilled chicken, tacos, but always warm, always thoughtful. At first, Harriet told herself it was just kindness. Pity, maybe. But as the days turned into weeks, she started noticing the difference. Byron never pressured her to talk, but he listened when she did. He didn't flinch when she was quiet, didn't take it personally when she snapped. He understood her without needing her to explain. That was new. One night, after another long day, Harriet sat across from him at the dinner table, stirring her fork through a bowl of rice. She caught herself watching him laugh at something on his phone, relaxed in a hoodie and sweats, his presence solid and calm. And out of nowhere, the comparison hit her. Roman had never been like this. Roman had loved the idea of her, the ambition, the image, the picture-perfect future. But when things got messy, or when she needed more than surface-level support, he pulled away. Byron stayed, even on the days when Harriet didn't feel like she deserved it, even when she didn't have the energy to be charming or composed. He showed up anyway, without asking for anything in return. And slowly, quietly, Harriet began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, something better had been waiting for her all along. It was a quiet Saturday morning when Paula knocked on the door, holding a woven tote and wearing her usual warm smile. "Harriet, sweetheart," she said as Harriet answered, still in her slippers. "I'm heading to the farmer's market. Want to come with me? I usually help keep Byron's fridge stocked so he doesn't live off frozen pizza." Harriet grinned. "Let me get dressed." They strolled through the market together, weaving through stalls of fresh produce and homemade goods. The sun was warm, and the air carried the scent of herbs and fresh bread. They sampled peaches, bargained over tomatoes, and laughed over an old man trying to sell them miracle honey. The conversation was easy, natural, like two friends catching up, not a woman and the mother of the man she was, well, whatever Byron was becoming to her. As they stopped by a booth selling fresh eggs, Paula glanced over at her, eyes kind but sharp. "So, how's my son treating you?" Harriet laughed, a little caught off guard. "He's incredible, really. I'm just not sure I deserve how kind he's been." Paula gently touched her arm. "You do, Harriet, but I'll tell you something. Byron's not just being kind for the sake of it." Harriet looked at her, curious. "When Byron was 12, Paula continued, his father left, just walked out one morning and never looked back. It broke something in him. He doesn't talk about it much, never has, but it changed how he saw people. It took years for him to trust anyone again. Still does." Harriet's heart softened. "Is that why he always keeps his distance?" Paula nodded. "Yes. Byron's careful with his heart. He only lets a few people into his world. And you, Harriet, you're one of them. That means something." They stood there for a moment, the noise of the market humming around them, but Harriet felt still, rooted. "I didn't know," she said softly. "You do now," Paula said, smiling gently. "Just don't run from it." As they headed to the car, bags full and conversation lingering, Harriet realized something. What she was building with Byron wasn't just comfort or rebound. It was real, quietly, steadily real. That night, after dinner and a quiet movie, Harriet found herself sitting on the couch beside Byron, legs tucked under her, a soft blanket draped across them both. The house was quiet, just the faint hum of the fridge in the background. She turned toward him, studying his face. Calm, thoughtful, the same quiet strength he'd shown since the moment she crashed back into his life. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Byron looked over, eyebrows raised. "Of course. That day, when you saw me in the rain, why did you stop? I mean, you could have kept driving. We hadn't talked in years." He leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling for a second before answering. "Because you were one of the very few friends I had in school." Harriet tilted her head, surprised. "Really?" He nodded slowly. "You were popular. Everyone liked you. But you never acted like you were above anyone. Not once. You'd say hi to me in the hallway, ask how I was doing. You even brought me cookies once. Chocolate chip. Said your mom made too many, but I always wondered if that was just an excuse." Harriet laughed. "It was." Byron smiled. "I never forgot that. And prom night, I was just planning to hang near the punch bowl and disappear early. But then you came over and asked me to dance. No one else would have done that. You made me feel seen, Harriet. You made high school bearable." Harriet's chest ached in the best way. "I didn't think I did anything special. I just thought you were shy and cute." Byron blinked, then actually blushed, a deep red creeping into his cheeks. "Cute?" he echoed. She shrugged with a smirk. "Yeah, still do." He looked down, shaking his head, that quiet smile still playing at his lips. "You have no idea how much that means." Harriet reached out and gently touched his hand, threading her fingers through his. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was warm, full, honest. "Thanks for stopping," she said softly. "I think you might have saved me more than I realized." Byron squeezed her hand, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think you saved me first." It was just another weekday morning, until it wasn't. Harriet had been walking briskly into the building, coffee in hand, mind already halfway into her first meeting, when she looked up and saw him. Roman. He was coming out of the parking garage, wearing the same tailored coat she picked out for him last Christmas. He looked just as surprised to see her. His mouth opened like he was about to speak. But before a single word escaped his lips, a familiar voice called out from across the sidewalk. "Hey, Harriet." She turned. Byron was crossing the street, holding her favorite ceramic mug, the one with the faded quote that read, "Mondays are optional." He waved it with a smile that instantly melted the tension she hadn't even realized was building in her chest. "You left this at home," he said, walking up to her. "Figured you'd need it for a long day." Harriet smiled wide, heart swelling at the simple gesture. "You're the best." Roman's face twisted slightly. "Home? What home?" Without missing a beat, Harriet slipped her arm around Byron's waist and leaned into him. "We live together," she said, her voice calm and certain. "And honestly, Roman, thank you for leaving me at the altar. It was the best thing that ever happened to me." She didn't take her eyes off Byron, not even for a second. Roman stepped forward. "We need to talk." Byron, still smiling but now standing a little taller, turned toward him. "You had your chance 3 weeks ago." Roman's tone sharpened. "This is between me and my fiancé." Harriet laughed. "Ex-fiancé, Roman. We don't have anything left to talk about." She took Byron's hand and casually walked past Roman, not bothering to look back. They stepped into the building, and Byron hit the elevator button. The doors opened, and they rode up together in silence at first, the morning's tension fading. Once inside, Byron turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded, that same confident smile still on her lips. "I'm great, because I have you." She reached up and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "I'll try to get home as soon as I can," she added. "Will you wait for me?" Byron smiled, his eyes soft. "Always." The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out, turning briefly to glance back at him. He was still watching her, holding her mug like it was something precious. And in that moment, Harriet knew. What she had now was real. Not perfect, not rushed, but rooted. The kind of love that didn't come with ultimatums or cold feet. The kind that showed up. Byron walked through the front door, humming to himself, still floating from the morning. His heart hadn't stopped racing since Harriet kissed his cheek in the elevator. Something about the way she held his hand in front of Roman, the way she said we live together, made it all feel real. Not just convenient, not just timing. Real. "Someone's in a good mood," Paula said, sitting at the dining room table surrounded by paperwork and an open laptop. Byron chuckled and ran a hand through his hair. "It's been a good day." He pulled out a chair and sat across from her, helping organize the documents she'd come by to review. They were going over quarterly numbers for the company, something Paula still helped him manage from time to time. "So?" she said, eyebrows raised. "Anything new between you two?" Byron grinned. "We talked about a lot. She saw Roman this morning. He tried to talk to her, but I showed up before he could say much. She told him off, said thank you for leaving her." Paula smiled, heart swelling. "Good for her, and you?" "She kissed me. On the cheek, but still. She told me she's doing great, because she has me." He paused, unable to hide the way his face lit up. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text from Harriet. "Wish I was there with you." Byron stared at the screen, smiling like a fool. Paula watched him, amused. "She doesn't even know, does she?" Byron glanced up. "Know what?" Paula folded her arms. Have you told her about your company? I told her I work remotely, mostly from home, he said. Paula rolled her eyes. No, Byron. Have you told her you own the company? He hesitated. No, I didn't think it was important. Paula burst out laughing. Only you would forget to tell the woman you love that you're a millionaire. Byron's eyes narrowed. Who said I'm in love? Paula gave him a look only a mother could pull off. Baby, you've been in love with that girl since high school. Everyone saw it, but you and her. Byron leaned back in his chair, quiet for a moment. Tell her, Paula said softly. When she gets home, be honest. If you love her, let her see all of you. Byron nodded slowly, smiling again. All right, Mom. I will. That evening, Harriet came home earlier than expected. She walked in through the front door, a grocery bag in one hand and a huge smile on her face. Smells like something good in here, she called out, setting the bag on the counter. And I finished my reports early, so I figured I'd surprise you. Byron looked up from his desk in the corner of the living room, smiling when he saw her. But then his smile slowly faded. Harriet noticed immediately. Hey, what's wrong? Byron stood, running a hand through his hair. There's something I need to tell you. I didn't think it mattered at first, but my mom made me realize it probably does. Harriet raised a brow, curious. What is it? Come here, he said, motioning her over to his computer. She stepped beside him as he pulled up a web page. It's the bio page for my company, he said quietly. She leaned in, scanning the screen. Her eyes widened as she saw his full name listed as founder and CEO of a major tech company, one she'd heard of, even used some of their tools in her own job. Below that, a brief history of how he'd started it after college, built it from the ground up, and led it to become a multi-million-dollar firm. She turned to him, stunned. This is real? Byron nodded. Yeah. Byron, how can you forget to tell someone this? He gave her a sheepish smile. Because it's not who I am. I mean, it's a part of what I've built, sure, but I don't lead with it. I've got great people running the day-to-day. I like coding, building things. I get lost in that and forget the title stuff. Harriet blinked, then burst out laughing. This is why I love you. You're so sweet and cute. It's ridiculous. Byron froze. Wait, you love me? Harriet smiled, walking closer to him. Yes, I do. I've been trying to figure it out for days. Why I haven't cried about Roman since that first night. Why I haven't felt angry or broken. Why I've felt okay. She took his hands in hers. It's because of you. The day you helped me move my stuff and we sat down to eat, I remember thinking, why didn't I really see you in high school? We could have been together all this time. Byron stared at her, his chest rising slowly. I've been in love with you since high school. I used to sit behind you in class and just hope you'd say my name, and when you agreed to stay here after the wedding day, that didn't happen. I thought maybe, just maybe, I had another chance. Harriet reached up and touched his face, her voice soft. Well, this time, I see you, all of you. Byron leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers, eyes closing for a second as if to take in the moment. No more missed chances, she whispered. He smiled. No more hiding. They stood there, quiet and close, two people who finally got it right. Not in a fairy tale way, but in the real, grown-up way, where love shows up, stays, and chooses you every day. The next morning, Harriet and Byron arrived at the office together. It had become a quiet routine. Byron would drive her in when he didn't have early meetings, walk her in with her coffee in hand, and see her off with a smile. But this morning, someone was waiting. Roman stood by the front doors of the building, arms crossed, eyes locked on them as they approached. His expression tightened when he saw their joined hands. Really, Harriet? Roman said sharply. Him? What does he even have? Look at him, tired jeans and sneakers. You can do better. Harriet didn't flinch. She didn't even break stride. She tightened her grip on Byron's hand and walked right past Roman without a word. No anger, no emotion. Just calm, deliberate silence. Roman's eyes burned into her back, expecting a reaction that never came. Inside, as Harriet headed for the elevators, Byron lagged behind for a moment, scanning the directory near the lobby. That's when a familiar voice called out. Byron Walker? Said Mr. Winters, a sharply dressed man in his late 50s, walking through the lobby with a folder in hand. He paused, adjusting his glasses. Well, I'll be. I thought that was you. Byron turned with a polite nod. Mr. Winters, good to see you. Mr. Winters extended a hand. It's been years. Didn't know you were in the building. Got a minute? I'd love to have you swing by my office just to catch up, maybe talk a little business. Byron smiled. Sure, I've got time. Roman, standing a few feet away, watched the exchange with growing unease. His boss, talking to Byron like they were old colleagues. Friends, even. He stiffened, dread creeping in. Back at his desk, Roman was unusually quiet, glancing over his shoulder every few minutes. He didn't approach Harriet again, not out of guilt, but fear. Fear of what Byron might say. Fear of what his boss might already know. And for the rest of the day, Roman kept his head down, finally realizing he hadn't just lost Harriet. He'd lost the chance to stand where Byron did, calm, confident, and chosen. That evening, after a quiet dinner at home, Byron glanced up from his tablet as Harriet walked into the living room. Hey, he said casually, I've got an invitation to Winters Enterprises' annual fundraiser. It's next weekend. I was wondering if you'd like to go with me? Harriet paused, a brow raised. Winters Enterprise? That's where Roman works. Byron blinked. Really? I didn't even realize. He leaned back on the couch, thoughtful. We don't have to go. I'll just send in a donation, no big deal. But Harriet shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. No, we're going. I always have a good time at that gala, and I look great in formal wear. Byron chuckled. You always look great. The next day, Paula swung by to check in, and Harriet casually mentioned the fundraiser. Paula lit up. Oh, we have to find you the perfect dress, something elegant, enough to make my son's eyes pop out of his head. Harriet laughed. That's the goal. They spent the afternoon shopping, trying on everything from sleek black gowns to bold, sparkling numbers. Finally, Paula pulled a deep emerald green dress from the rack. Silky, off-shoulder, hugging in all the right places. Harriet slipped it on and stepped out of the fitting room. Oh yes, Paula said, fanning herself dramatically. He's going to pass out. When the night of the gala arrived, Byron was already dressed and pacing near the front door in a perfectly tailored navy suit. He'd seen Harriet look beautiful before, but when she appeared at the top of the stairs in that emerald dress, he forgot how to breathe. She walked down slowly, her heels clicking against the floor, her smile soft and confident. Byron just stared. Wow. Harriet stepped up to him, looped her arms around his neck, and kissed him. Full on the lips, unapologetic, right there in the entryway. He blinked, dazed. You? Okay. Yeah, I nearly passed out. She laughed. Good, that means Paula and I did our job. At the gala, heads turned when they walked in together. Harriet carried herself like a woman who had found her peace, her strength, and Byron never let go of her hand. Roman saw them from across the room mid-conversation with coworkers. His face dropped, and he looked away quickly. Harriet didn't flinch. She didn't need revenge or confrontation. She had everything she needed, standing beside her, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. The evening was going beautifully. Harriet and Byron mingled effortlessly, and she felt a kind of lightness she hadn't known in years. The live band played soft jazz, the room sparkled with laughter and clinking glasses, and for the first time at a public event, Harriet wasn't performing for anyone. She was simply happy. But that peace was interrupted when Byron was momentarily pulled away by a group of executives, one of whom insisted on introducing him to a board member visiting from out of town. Harriet was near the refreshment table when Roman appeared. He approached slowly, as if testing the air around her. Harriet, he said, eyes uncertain. I just wanted to say, I was a coward. What I did, walking away like that, it was wrong and I'm sorry. She didn't respond right away, just studied him with the calm detachment of someone who had already healed. But, Roman continued, I don't understand how you moved on so fast. We were together for 3 years. And now you're… what? With him? Harriet folded her arms. Byron is an old friend. He was there for me when everything fell apart. He didn't ask for anything. He just showed up. He didn't run when it got hard. Roman scoffed. He's just taking advantage of you, Harriet. Come on. Before she could respond, Byron returned, his presence quiet but firm. Everything okay? Harriet turned to him with a warm smile and slipped her arm around his waist. "Yes, sweetheart. Everything's just fine." Without giving Roman another glance, they walked away together. Roman stood alone, jaw tight, watching the two of them melt back into the crowd like they belonged there. Minutes later, Mr. Winters stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. The room settled as he spoke. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Your support is what allows us to continue the work we do. And a very special thank you to Byron Walker for his generous donation of $50,000 this evening." Applause broke out as heads turned toward Byron. "Byron, would you mind coming up to say a few words?" Byron looked at Harriet, who beamed with pride. He leaned close and whispered, "Come with me?" She nodded. They walked up together, hand in hand. Byron spoke briefly, humbly about giving back and building a future that mattered. He didn't mention money or power, just values. Roman stood frozen, realization hitting hard. Byron wasn't just a momentary rebound. He was the man Harriet chose, publicly, confidently. And Roman? He stormed out, defeated, unnoticed by anyone but himself. When Byron and Harriet returned home that night, the air between them was still warm from the joy of the gala. Harriet slipped off her heels by the door, while Byron loosened his tie, watching her with that familiar soft look he always had when she wasn't paying attention. As she walked into the living room, he followed and cleared his throat. "Harriet, there's something I've been wanting to say." She turned to face him, curious. "Yeah?" "I want you to stay here," he said gently. "Permanently. There's no reason for you to look for another place. This is your home now, if you want it to be." Harriet smiled, eyes twinkling. "I stopped looking weeks ago." Relieved, Byron stepped closer and pulled her into a kiss, slow, sure, full of everything unsaid. When they parted, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Her eyes widened. "Byron, what's that?" He grinned. "It's not what you think." She opened it and laughed. It was a house key, identical to the one she already had. "Byron," she chuckled, "I already have a key to the house." "I know," he said, smiling wider now. "But..." He reached into his other pocket and pulled out a second box. This time, her expression shifted. "What?" Before she could finish, Byron was on one knee, the second box open in his hand. "Harriet Cross, will you marry me?" Her breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. She nodded, overwhelmed with joy. "Yes," she whispered, voice cracking. "Yes, I will." Byron stood, wrapped his arms around her, and kissed her as though they were already promised to each other forever. When they pulled apart, he looked at her seriously. "I don't want to wait. I'm ready, but I'm not gonna rush you." Harriet shook her head, still catching her breath. "I'm ready too. Call your mom. Let's do it tomorrow." And they did. The next morning, hand in hand, wearing simple clothes and glowing like the sun had come up just for them, they walked into City Hall. No big ceremony, no guests, just love. And they were married, quietly, simply, beautifully. Exactly how they needed it to be. For weeks after their quiet City Hall wedding, Harriet and Byron kept their marriage tucked away like a precious secret. Only close family members knew. Paula, Harriet's parents, and a few trusted friends. There was no announcement, no social media post, no rings flashing under office lights. It wasn't about hiding. It was about keeping something just for themselves in a world that was always watching. But secrets, especially joyful ones, have a way of slipping out. About 6 weeks later, a photo surfaced on social media, Harriet and Byron holding hands at a restaurant. Harriet wearing a simple gold band on her left hand. Then someone shared a blurry but unmistakable image of the two at City Hall. Byron signing something, Harriet laughing beside him. The internet did what it does best, it erupted. High school friends turned soulmates. Byron Walker, tech genius, quietly marries longtime friend Harriet Cross. Left at the altar but found a forever kind of love. Harriet's comeback story. Speculation ran wild, but the story stuck. Not of scandal, but of redemption and real love. Harriet and Byron never confirmed it publicly, but they didn't deny it either. The quiet mystery only made people root for them more. A year later, they decided it was time to celebrate properly. This time, no secrecy, no quiet courthouse, just everything they didn't do the first time, on their own terms. They rented a beautiful vineyard on the edge of the city. The guest list was full. Family, childhood friends, Byron's team, Harriet's co-workers, investors, and former classmates who remembered them from back when Byron was the shy guy with big dreams, and Harriet was the girl who danced with him on prom night. Harriet wore a gown that shimmered under the setting sun. Byron, in a sleek tailored suit, never took his eyes off her. As they stood under an arch of white flowers, renewing their vows with full hearts and wide smiles, it was clear this was no fairy tale. It was something better, real, hard-earned love that had survived disappointment, distance, and the unexpected. And this time, everyone saw it, and everyone believed in it. As the sun dipped below the vineyard horizon, casting golden light over their friends and family, Harriet and Byron stood hand in hand, surrounded by applause, laughter, and everything they'd once only hoped for. There had been no grand plan, no perfect timeline, just two people who found their way back to each other when it mattered most. After the music faded and the final toasts were made, they slipped away from the crowd. Barefoot in the grass, her heels dangling from one hand, his jacket slung over his shoulder. They looked at each other, both smiling, that quiet, knowing smile, the kind only shared between people who've lived through the storms and found something better on the other side. "I still can't believe we got here," Harriet whispered. Byron leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. "I can. I've been waiting since high school." They didn't need anything else. Not the headlines, not the fanfare, just this. A love that waited. A love that grew. A love that stayed. And this time, they were never letting go. The end. Hope you enjoyed this wonderful story by Green Tea Tales. Help the channel to grow by like, share, subscribe, and leave your comment.